Hi friends, this is Ganesh Nayak. I help finance professionals and students to excel in their career and become a better version of themselves. And I also help students preparing for FRM and CF exam. We have with us one of our students who has been able to clear FRM Level 1 in the May 2023 exam. And he's going to be talking about his experience of clearing the exam in the first year of college and what are the challenges he faced and how he was able to manage and clear the exam. So we have with us Vansh. Hi Vansh, thank you very much for joining in. And can you give us a brief about yourself? When did you started your preparation with us, and what were you doing at that point in time?
Okay. First of all, thank you for having me, sir. And I'm Vansh Khanuja, a first year student at the University of Delhi. And I
Mhm.
started my FRM journey back in November 2022. So for the first 3 months, I was doing self study through the Kaplan textbooks. But post that, I was really worried about the valuation and the cons model. The books
Mhm.
were really tough, and even though it was a simplified version, I could still not get it because I didn't have maths in my 12th. Sorry.
Okay.
So, and then I purchased the video lectures. So, sir simplified everything, but still my preparation was somewhat going downhill because I was not attempting as many questions as I should be. So, after that, sir even connected with me on WhatsApp. So, he helped me a lot through sharing question banks and mock tests as well.
Okay. One question. So first of all, why did you go for FR?
So, sir, I've always been a finance enthusiast, and
Okay.
I'm also preparing for CFA. So, but the problem is
Okay.
that you cannot appear for CFA before second year of college. So I went with
Okay.
FRM not just because I had to do some sort of certification, but when I looked at the program, it's based on risk management, and my ultimate goal, my dream is to open a hedge fund. So it's
Hmm.
directly related to risk management only. So when I looked
Okay.
at the
Got it.
program and when I looked at the brand value of the FRM, I just thought that it's a no-brainer to go for it.
Got it. Now, when you started with our preparation, the videos. So what was the order of preparation? Did you read in the same order the videos were given, or you just deviated slightly
No,
here
so
and
I
there?
started with valuation because the first three books were much easier than valuation, but in book four I was having a lot of troubles. And for the first 3 months of my preparation, I was just scared of valuation, so I was kind of
Okay.
neglecting it. So I thought that
Okay.
first let's and if it was not for valuation, I might have just went with the revision videos of your YouTube channel. But the later part of the cons book where it starts with linear regression and time series and the whole book of valuation. So I could not really grasp the contents of those books, those chapters. So for that reason, I purchased the video lectures. And
Okay.
I should say that even in book three and book one, you helped me clear a lot of concepts. So
Okay.
if it was not for you, maybe I would have not cleared the exam in the first attempt, or my quartiles would not have been this great.
Because you got first quarter in every book.
Yes. And
So
sir, a couple
now,
of months
now,
before I gave the
yeah.
exam, I gave a sectional test of book one. So, and book one, everyone considers book one to be really easy because it's just theory based and there are not a lot of numericals. But I scored around 10% on that exam. So there were 50 questions and I scored around 5 or 6. So my answer was less than the expected value of the exam.
Right. So the sectional test which is there in our book, in our
Yeah.
question bank, right? Now, when did you start the chapter wise question solving? Which month?
Chapter based questions I started a couple of months before the exam. Before that, I was not attempting questions at all. So that was uh, one of the drawback of my preparation strategy because without attempting a lot of questions, no matter how well you understand the concepts, you cannot really clear the exam without having to attempt take the questions because GAP really does not test you on the formulas or they don't test you on the definitions. They just trick you onto some of the terminology and then you are at the time confused because there is a time limit of 1 hour and you have to solve this many questions. So it really gets on you. So I was really nervous on my few mock tests, the earlier ones, but later on
Okay.
I built up the confidence and on the exam it was fairly smooth.
Okay, got it. And then did you solve chapter wise questions for all the chapters?
Only the first three books because I didn't have time for the last one.
Oh, okay. And what about the videos? Videos, were you able to see all the chapters, all the book?
Yeah, almost. I used the 2x feature.
Acha, you increased the speed and you watched, you completed
Yeah,
the
in the
whole part.
ones in
Okay.
which I was confident, like the book three, I was confident about that. except for the last few chapters, swaps and interest rate futures. Apart from that, I was confident in that book. So for those chapters, I used the 2x feature because I just have to go through it quickly. I didn't have even enough time.
Okay. And when did you complete, when did you stop your chapter-wise question solving? Which date, if you
Uh,
remember?
my attempt was 19th of May, and I stopped the chapter-wise question around 25 April, somewhere around that. The last
Okay.
week of April,
Okay.
you could say.
Okay. And then what was the approach that you were following after that?
A mock test every couple of days.
Okay. And what was the average score that you were getting in those mocks?
Okay, so all in all, I gave around 8 to 10 mocks, and my score in the earlier ones was somewhere around 50-55, and on the later mocks, it peaked at 73.
Okay. Okay. And then you went for the exam. So when you entered the center, what happened in that first 1 hour of the exam? How was the question? Was it very easy, very difficult? What happened?
Okay, so first of all, I'd like to share a bit of what happened before the exam. On the morning of the exam, I skipped my breakfast. All right, and it was a really hot day. It
Okay.
was in Mumbai. It was a really hot day. I skipped breakfast. I just had my exam was scheduled at 2 p.m. So I had a McDonald's burger at around 12. So, and I
Mhm,
was having
mhm.
severe headaches because of that, because the hot climate and skipping breakfast and then not being hydrated enough. So,
Okay.
but when I went to the exam, I thought that let's forget everything. I've put 7 months into this, so let's
Mhm.
forget everything and put my 100% into it. But the problem was the first five questions I was blank. The first five, I could not
Oh.
literally not understand what the question was saying. So, but the actual reason was that the questions were simple. They were tricky, but they were simple to solve. But the problem was that I was anxious about the exam, so I was just thinking that this is it. I have to do this, otherwise everything is went to win. So that pressure actually made me blank on the first few questions. But then I relaxed a bit, and then I approached the questions again, and at the end of the exam I calculated on how many questions I was confident about. So around, I knew that 70 questions were, I was confident that I had done them correctly, and
Okay. And
15
you were able
pure
to
guess.
solve everything in that 4 hours
I
properly.
actually completed the exam in 3 hours.
Oh. And then what happened in the last 1 hour?
I was just checking everything over and over again.
Okay. Okay. Now, how many theory, how many calculation questions were there?
A calculation were really not that much, around I would say 30-40 were calculation questions of numericals, and the rest were theory. And even the calculations, one some were really simple, but they were actually tricky. Like one question I had that was to calculate the portfolio DV01. So I remember
Okay.
that for the portfolio DV01, you had to add the DV01s of all the instruments, and
Right.
for the portfolio duration, you have to use the weighted average method. So they were actually checked, and they gave you the portfolio values. So they were expecting you to do the weighted average, whereas you have to do the simple addition. So some numericals
Okay.
was really easy if you knew the concepts.
Right. Okay. Okay. And then what about theory? How was theory?
Theory was it was really confusing because I used the elimination method every MCQ. So for every theory question, I could eliminate two options, but I'll always be 50-50 among the rest of the two. So it
Okay.
was just a high probability chances. So
Hmm.
and some
Okay.
were around 20 to 30 were really easy, but rest were just high probability guesses.
Okay. Okay. And when you came out of the exam, what was the number in your mind, or were you confident that I will clear the exam?
No,
Okay.
I called
And
everyone, my friends, my family, and said that let's see what happens because I gave my best and that's all I could do. But I cannot promise
okay.
you results. And I told that my results would be out a month from now, and we'll see
Mhm.
then. Let's just not talk about anything for now. That was my
Okay. But
exam.
mentally, you had any number in your mind that I'll be able to clear this many questions or something like that?
After being conservative, and I was doing this on the last hour of the exam, after being conservative, I calculated 74 as my score.
Okay, because you
So,
had time. You were able to do most of the questions in 3 hours. So
yeah,
and
so
3 hours, and you started the exam with blank questions.
yeah.
So this is very interesting. Okay. Now, when the results came out, all first quartile, and this is really good because the first competitive exam after being 12th standard, first year of college, and first attempt FRM level one, first quartile. This is very, very, very good. So, what has been the reaction of people?
To be honest, look, because I have been talking about this for the last couple of years that I'm going to excel in the field of finance, and everyone knows that I'm a finance enthusiast. So, and everybody knows that CFA is much tougher than FRM. All right, so a lot of my friends just said that, yeah, you were supposed to do this, so that's not really an achievement. So, but then I'll tell them that,
Okay.
look, it's the first quartiles in every topic. And yeah, it's much easier than CFA. Let's see what you'll do in CFA. So the reaction has been pretty much like
Okay.
this. A few congratulated me, and my family's like, we knew that you could do this, so we never really doubted you.
Wonderful.
So that's the kind of reaction.
Now, if I ask you if you can give three tips on the basis of your experience, how to prepare for the FRM level one exam.
Okay, so first of all, I'd just say that attempt as many questions as possible. Okay, because uh, my initial
Okay.
my initial strategy was just to understand the concepts, but it does not work that way because if you do not know how to approach the questions, no matter how well you know the concepts, you are not going to do well. But if you know how to
Okay.
approach the question, how to understand it, because there is a time bound, all right. So even if you know the concepts, there is a time limit,
Mhm.
and that's going to put stress on you'll be really stressed out during the exam. So the best
Right.
way to prepare is to prepare a lot of questions. So my advice would be, and my strategy for CFA level one is that complete a reading and do at least 10 to 15 questions related to that reading. And that number really depends on the weightage. Like if it's something like hypothesis testing, so you could do 20, 25 questions. But if it's a smaller topic, then you can do 5 to 10 questions. That's enough. But at least practice a lot. And my
Okay.
next strategy would be, and advice would be, sorry, to not neglect any topics because what I did was I was just avoiding a lot of practical questions because I was afraid of cons and valuation earlier during the earlier stages of my preparation. But that's not the right strategy because ultimately you'll have to do it. There's no escape. You cannot just hide from it. So eventually you'll have to
Okay.
do it. So why not today? So just start off with it. If you are not confident, just go with Ganesh sir, take his video lectures or live lectures, but do it at least.
Okay.
You don't want to put
Okay.
everything for the end. And my third one would be time management because it has been, I have experienced it. I'll tell you this. Do you know that? Do you remember that insurance question, the break-even premium? So I always took that for granted. That if this comes in the exam, I'll solve it easily. And that question was there on exam. The numbers were changed, but the question was there to calculate the break-even premium for 2 years. So, and I was not able to solve it. I
Okay.
calculated the answer for around 10 to 15 minutes, and my answer did not match to any of the four choices. And I was really stressed out, and it was happening in the middle of the exam. Okay, so my strategy for the mocks was that if there are any hard questions, like from valuation or cons, where I know I'm not that confident, so I'll just skip the questions and I'll circle it because I was giving the mocks in a paper and pen format. So I'll just circle it
Mhm.
and I'll come back to it later when I've completed all the questions. But when I
Okay.
looked at the break-even premium question, I thought that this is within my circle of competence and I can do this. But then 15 minutes later, I just realized that I cannot do that. So that really stressed me out. So my advice would be to everyone out there that if you are facing any problems, so don't waste
Mhm.
15, 20 minutes on a single question. It's not worth it. It's a 4 hour exam. You cannot utilize a lot of time on a single question, no matter how easy it may be. Just come back it after you have completed all the rest of the questions.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. And overall level, what has been your experience of the content of FRM? The final question.
The level you're talking about the difficulty.
How no no the how was the content that of FRM exam? What is your view on that? The content that you read now for FRM level one, books, then chapters.
I have always been a qualitative kind of person. I always look at the stories and the qualitative section of all the finance topics. So as I told you, I was afraid of cons, but after FIM now I've come to realize that how important the numbers are, and obviously in finance you have to deal with numbers. There is no escape. So the quality. of the content was really great. Got to learn a lot, and
Mhm.
never not there was not a single question in the whole exam on the mock test in which I thought that it's not going to be worth my time. So every question
Right.
was related to what my eventual career is going to be. So there are practical questions. They are going to aid you in your life. And GAP
Mhm.
does not really test you on formula and mugging up the content. They just test you on interpretation. And
Right.
that's what you are going to do in real life.
Right. Right.
Okay.
Right.
So the
Wonderful.
it's been wonderful and I got to learn a lot.
Wonderful, wonderful, Vansh. And thank you very much for taking out time and talking to us because this journey that we talked about and the way you prepared, what challenges you had, and the lastly, the three tips that you gave is going to be very, very helpful for a lot of students who have been able to see they're giving the exam, they're planning to give the exam. So this is going to be really motivating for them. And I'm sure this certification and CFA will help you to go to new opportunities, new roles as you move out of college. So thank you very much again, once again, for taking out time
Thank
and
you, sir.
talking to us and sharing your journey. Thank you.
Thank you.